I caught my wife sending money to her secret husband and kids overseas. So, I emptied our joint accounts and served her with divorce papers. I was 35 and thought I had it all figured out. Married to Lena, a woman with an effortless smile that once made me feel like I'd hit the jackpot. We shared 2 incredible kids and a life built on routine. I was a financial analyst, decent job, stable paycheck. And she was an interior designer who preferred to call herself semi-retired because, well, working consistently was never her thing. I didn't mind that at first. I bought into the idea that she was the primary caregiver, the architect of our little world at home. But sometimes love is the perfect camouflage for deceit. Lena was complicated. And by complicated, I mean entitled in a way that bordered on absurdity. But the worst part, I didn't see it, or maybe I did and just brushed it under the rug. It was easier to laugh when she insisted we needed a $3,000 coffee table to really tie the room together, or rolled my eyes when she dismissed chores as something beneath her, opting instead to hire a cleaner on my dime. I didn't marry you to play housemaid, she'd scoff, waving off my suggestions to split the workload. But even then, I didn't feel the bitterness that came later. Not when she upgraded every inch of our house without asking. Not when she kept rewarding herself with high-end clothes and called them essentials, and not even when she insisted we fly halfway across the world for extravagant vacations that left us just one emergency away from financial collapse. We deserve it, she'd say, her eyes daring me to disagree. And I didn't, at least not until I realized what those expenses were really hiding. The day everything cracked open wasn't anything special. It was a gray Sunday, one of those nothing days where you start your morning with black coffee and the sound of the kids' laughter fading as they head out with their grandparents. Lena had gone to brunch with her friends, her phone buzzing away as it charged on the kitchen counter. I was scrubbing dishes when a notification pinged. Normally, I'd ignore it. Lena guarded her phone like it held state secrets. But this time, the light from the screen drew me in. Wire transfer of $4,000 successfully sent. My heart stuttered. The transfers had been an itch at the back of my mind for months. Little notches in our bank statements I'd questioned, but never dug into. Business investments overseas, she'd say, waving me off like a bothersome fly. But this number was bigger, more blatant, like a dare. I tapped into her email app, scrolling past threads about brunches and PDA meetings until I found a folder labeled personal. My pulse hammered in my ears as I opened it. The first few emails were innocuous enough, but then I found pictures, photos of her with a man named Samuel and, more sickeningly, of 2 kids who looked like they could have been my children's cousins, if not siblings. I read one message, then another. The pieces clicked together, too loud in my brain. Samuel was her husband. Husband. And those kids. Hers too. A second family across the world, funded by me. The sucker who'd been paying Forb gifts and family bonding vacations. I didn't feel the rage at first. That would come later. What I felt was emptiness, like the floor beneath me had dissolved, and I was free-falling through dark, unending space. The old me, the one who believed confrontation would fix things, would have called her right then and there. But this was bigger, darker. This was betrayal so deep it felt like I'd been gutted. So instead, I did the only logical thing I could think of. I emptied our joint accounts. Every cent, gone in one click to a private account she couldn't touch. I wasn't going to let her use my hard-earned money to fund her lies any longer. Then I called my lawyer. I need divorce papers drawn up. Today, I said, my voice shaking raw. He hesitated. This is sudden, Michael. Are you sure? Yes. I'm damn sure. She came home a few hours later, the scent of mimosa and expensive perfume trailing behind her. Lena always had this way of sauntering into a room, like it was made just for her. Today, it made my stomach churn. Hey, she said, barely glancing at me as she dropped her purse on the counter and checked her reflection in the hall mirror. Where are the kids? With your parents, I said, leaning back against the kitchen island. I'd practiced this moment in my head a dozen times in the past few hours, but now that it was here, words failed me. Good. I need a minute to decompress, she said, still oblivious. She turned to face me, finally noticing my expression. What's wrong with you? I pushed the stack of papers across the counter. Sign these. Her eyes darted to the divorce papers, then back to me, searching for a joke in my eyes that wasn't there. You're kidding, right? What is this? Your free pass out of this marriage, I said. Consider it a gift. Like the ones you sent to Samuel and the kids. The color drained from her face. She stood there, frozen, as if time itself had stopped. You went through my phone? Yeah, I did. And thank God for that. The silence that followed was suffocating. It was like the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for her to speak, to defend herself, to do anything. But she just stood there, eyes wet and wide, mouth slightly open like a broken doll. How long, Lena? I demanded, my voice splintering. How long have you been playing me? She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing like she was trying to choke down her guilt. Michael, you don't understand. No, you don't understand. I shouted, my fists clenching at my sides. You bled me dry for years. You lied to me, to our kids. You turned me into a fool, funding your second life without even blinking. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. That's the thing, Lena. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed everything. Our family, our trust, our future. You took all of it and set it on fire. She stared at the divorce papers like they were a ticking bomb. Finally, she whispered, I'll fight this. You can't just take everything from me. I laughed then, a dark, humorless sound. Try me. I've got enough evidence to make sure you don't see a dime more than you deserve. The days that followed were a blur of courtrooms, paperwork, and the awkward explanations I had to give to friends and family. Lena put up a fight, of course. She tried to play the victim, painting me as the cold, unfeeling husband who'd tossed her aside without a second thought. But the truth has a way of surfacing. Once the evidence of her wire transfers and emails came to light, her narrative crumbled. The court ruled in my favor. She lost her claim to spousal support, and I was awarded primary custody of our kids. Lena was left with visitation rights and the empty shell of her reputation. Her eyes, once sharp with entitlement and confidence, now looked hollow. Lena moved out soon after the ruling, her life reduced to a modest apartment on the edge of town. The grand persona she'd built over the years, fed by my money and endless entitlement, was stripped down to its raw, unvarnished truth. For a while, I expected her to lash out, to try and find some way to claw her way back to the comfort she'd lost. But she didn't. It was like she knew that the game was over, the mask permanently shattered. The kids adjusted in their own time, with more questions than answers at first. I gave them the only thing I could, honesty softened by love. Mom made mistakes, big ones. But that doesn't change how much she loves you, I told them, even when saying it tasted like ash in my mouth. Months turned into a year. The sting of betrayal dulled, replaced by a cautious sense of peace. I built routines that didn't revolve around tiptoeing around someone's moods or whims. I found joy in simple things. Teaching my son to ride a bike, making Saturday pancakes with my daughter, and listening to their giggles filling the house. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that was enough. Lena's visits were sporadic, quieter now. The once commanding presence who dictated our life was a shadow, polite and reserved. If she felt regret, she never spoke it aloud, but it was there in the awkward silence when our paths crossed during pickups and drop-offs. I wasn't the same man who'd overlooked red flags for the sake of peace, nor was I the fool blinded by love. I was stronger, scarred but wiser, and aware of what it meant to guard not just your heart but your sense of self. In the end, betrayal had rewritten my life, but not the way Lena had expected. It didn't destroy me, it set me free.